You guys have the agenda in front of you. I'm pulling it up right now. Can I have item 1, approval of the minutes for the last meeting?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
By Nick, second by Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed. Action items 2.1, recommend approval of payroll certification.
I'll move it.
Moved by Barb, second by Nick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 2.2, recommend approval of petty cash. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Nick, second by Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend approval of CARES Act Emergency Aid Grant Awards.
Anthony,
Anthony,
Yeah.
you need to mute one of your devices.
wait.
Barb, second by Nick. All in favor?
No, Anthony,
You
Wait.
got a delay, Anthony.
Approval of petty cash. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Nick, second by Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Recommend approval of CARES Act Emergency Aid Grant Awards.
Anthony,
Anthony,
Yeah.
you need to mute one of your devices.
wait.
Barb, second by Nick. All in favor?
No, Anthony.
You got a delay, Anthony.
Right, but is the issue on your side?
There, now you're better.
Okay.
Hold,
We're still getting a several second delay.
hold. Let me,
I'm not doing anything different on my end.
Mute one of your devices.
it's just looping.
No, Anthony.
You're not hearing it twice, Anthony?
I am hearing it twice, but I don't think it's on my side.
Now you're better.
We're still getting a several second delay.
Let me,
I'm not doing anything different on my end.
I lost you for a minute.
I am hearing it twice, but I don't think it's on my side.
We're still getting a several second.
Sorry
I'm
that
gonna
was
log off and
on.
log back on.
No. Stay where you are. It's okay. All right. We're good. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right, we can continue. Can you start from the action item 2.1?
All right. Action item 2.1, recommend approval of payroll certification. That was made by Nick, second by Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2.2, recommend approval of petty cash. It was made by Nick, second by Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 2.3, recommend approval of CARES Act Emergency Aid Grant Awards. Can I have a motion?
Move.
Moved by
Margaret.
Margaret,
Second.
second by Nick. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
2.4,
I just have a question. On one thing said may include lost revenue. Is there, in this CARES Act, we can use this money, Michael, as part of tuition decrease?
We can use the, so there's two major pots of money, one for the students, which has to be provided, either cut checks or amend their financial aid award for, any type of expenses associated with COVID-19. On the institutional side, the college still preparing a final plan. We're still waiting for final guidance from SUNY. We believe we have final guidance from U.S. Department of Education, but SUNY is further clarifying what is eligible. But we do expect that the college will be able to utilize CARES Act funding for both state aid reductions that we're anticipating from, the governor. The governor, when the budget was approved on April 1st, on or about April 1st, received additional powers and authority to further reduce the budget based on, challenges that the state is having, both income tax and sales tax. So there's been a number of scenarios that I think Dr. Drum has provided to the board relative to potential state aid cuts of anywhere between 10% and 50%. The budget director submitted a financial plan about 2 weeks ago that represented that aid to localities, which is what the community colleges get their funding through, had a 50% reduction, which, we receive about 14 million in state aid. And so, a 50% reduction would be about 7 million. If the reduction was 25%, it would be about a $3.5 million state aid cut. So, the total amount of the institutional care funding that the colleges is going to receive is 2.4 million. So, even 2.4 million won't completely address the state aid reductions, but that's one of the rationales that the state is giving for a larger cut, because they're stating, well, all the SUNY schools are receiving this federal funding, so it's not really going to be a cut to the college. So meanwhile, we have additional costs that we're bearing relative to getting everything addressed with distance learning and additional costs. We also can use the institutional funds to cover costs associated with refunds to students for both the dining services and their housing costs associated with the time period that they vacated campus, which was on or about March 19th through, the second week of May. So as stated in the past, the 2.4 million, the needs out there are well exceed the 2.4 million that the college is going to receive. And we're just reviewing all the alternative funding sources that either the college or the affiliates have in order to respond appropriately to both refunds to the students, as well as trying to address some of the reductions that the college is anticipating are forthcoming by both the state and also potentially next year by the sponsor.
Thank you, Michael. Hey, Barb, can you move your screen down? We only see the top of your head. We'd like to see your entire face. Is that possible? Yeah, perfect.
Is
Much
that better?
A lot better. Thank you very much.
Maybe I did that on purpose, okay?
All right. We like this one much better, though.
Thank you.
Nick, any other questions for Michael?
No.
All right. Item 2.4, recommend approval of BLDC COVID-19 Disaster Relief Technical Assistance Grant Award.
Move.
Moved by Barb,
Second.
second by Margaret. All in favor?
Aye.
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 2.5, recommend approval of federal college work study allocation.
Move.
Moved by Margaret, second by
Yeah, I'll
Second.
second that.
Barb. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 2.6, recommend approval of resolution for candidate for promotion. Motion by Margaret,
Yep.
Yeah, I'll second.
second by Barb.
Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right, that brings us to informational items. Dr. Drum, President's report.
Nope.
Nope, there's 2 more items on there.
Oh, I must have the old one. Sorry, I pulled up the old one. 2.7, I don't have it in front of me. Can you read it aloud?
It is,
Recommend approval of resolution of the Tentative Educational Support Personnel Association, ESPA, labor agreement for the period of September 1, 2020 through August 31st, 2021.
I don't have that either.
You had to upload the book again.
Okay, well, why don't we do this? Can we have a motion and a second, then we'll have a discussion?
I'll make a
I'll move, I'll
motion.
move.
Moved by Margaret, second by Barb. All right, Dr. Drum, can you give us an update for those of us who haven't had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, well, this is basically an extension of the current contract with increments parallel to what the Guild and the FA are receiving. You might recall, the SFA had a 5-year contract, so they're off cycle. It's running out, and so this is an extension of everything, with the exception of they're receiving the average that everybody else would receive in the fall, assuming we can do that come fall. All these are assumptions based on where the state and the county go eventually. So it puts them on par, and it puts them back on the same cycle with contract as Guild and FA. Michael can can give you more specifics. This was struck with our labor management group that Michael chairs for us.
Have discussions been held with all the unions on the possible ramifications of state and local funding and how drastic that is and how that plays out?
Well, only grossly at this point, until we see whether it's 20% or 50%, because the ramifications are radically different between 20%, 50%. I'll get to that in my report.
Have they been notified of, at least the lowest or, the best case versus the worst case scenario? Michael?
Yes,
Sure.
I've presented to all the shared governance groups, college assembly and CAO and COI, and have I've provided them the same information that Dr. Drum and I have provided to the board relative to the scenarios that we may face. Again, I think the state dynamics, which are the most significant, are all driven by whether the state's going to get supplemental federal aid via whatever the next version of CARES Act 4 or 5 is. So I think right now it's really speculative to know exactly what the magnitude of the cuts are going to be. Having said that, so we've been very forthcoming and there's been quite a bit of dialogue, not formally, but certainly with leadership of each of the 3 bargaining units related to, options. We'll be presenting to the board probably next month, a voluntary furlough program, a voluntary separation incentive program. All of these we need to have conversations with the union because these are mandatory subjects of bargaining. There's other initiatives that the college is contemplating. So we're having, I think, ongoing discussions with leadership, as well as just, very concerned employees about what the future is going to look like relative to the financial, sustainability of the college. So, there's much more to come. We've done as much planning as I think the college is capable of doing without having definitive numbers in front of it. But we are preparing to, exercise any number of initiatives to ensure a sustainable budget going forward.
Was it well received, or do they not understand the magnitude, or because some of these are pretty drastic?
I don't know, I wouldn't represent they were well received, but I would say that I think everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but I would say that I think there is an understanding of the severity of the situation, understanding that this has affected a lot of people already, personally, and perhaps spouses have been affected by their employers. And, and then we have all the volatility of everybody working remotely. So there's a lot of layers of complexity, in addition to the fact that the state is having substantial financial problems, the county's having substantial financial problems, and all of that is rolling downhill to the college now, with at least two of its major funding sources being potentially significantly reduced. So, there's separate language in each of the three bargaining contracts, labor contracts associated with layoffs, retrenchment, termination. So, it's a very complex process that we're evaluating, and I think the college's approach is to try to mitigate, a substantial reduction in workforce, and I think that's part of the reason we're looking at some of these alternatives, and including a voluntary furlough program, which the county just is considering and may be passed later this week by the county legislature. I think the college is going to entertain a similar type of program, as well as, the board approved a voluntary separation incentive program back in, I think, 2013.
I need to move for a minute here.
And we're, it's been, 7 years since one of those has occurred, and we're also seriously considering implementing something very similar, to encourage those that do have the opportunity to retire or depart from the organization, to provide them some incentive to do that, understanding that most likely a significant number of those positions will not be refilled.
Michael, I had a question for Kevin. When I talked to him about almost all contracts that I've ever seen have something in there about acts of God that kind of null and void the contract. This is obviously an act of God. Kevin said there's nothing, right, Kevin? You told me that. There's nothing in these contracts like that. But
Yeah,
I gotta go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, most professional service contracts, even construction contracts, I think, do have this force majeure.
Force majeure, exactly.
That,
right.
Relate to exactly what you're saying. And then contracts aren't quite null and void, but, there are opportunities related to both parties, related to what the terms and conditions are during the course of force majeure. In the labor agreements, there's nothing in there that's like that. There's just other language related to, the parties can also always, if the parties desire, can mutually agree to do whatever it wants to do. The trick here is what will the parties mutually want to do in order to avoid X, Y, Z. And that's really, that'll be the delicate discussions and negotiations between the college and the three bargaining units. And, as there's very diverse perspectives and interests by the parties. And, I wouldn't want to represent what those might be, but I think the college would endeavor to sit down and have discussions with each of the bargaining units, try to optimize alternatives to the ultimate reduction in workforce. You know, if the cuts are at a 50% state aid level, then I think there's clearly an acknowledgement in the college that there will need to be a reduction in workforce. And then it's just a matter of, are we gonna, is the college gonna have to comply with the letter of the labor agreements, which I think the college would, from a fiduciary vantage point, would have to comply with, but those are different for each of those three collective bargaining agreements.
So Michael, what you're saying is if we had a 50% reduction and Joe Smith is a professor, he's still entitled to his 2 or 3% increase?
At this point, yes. At this point, the labor agreement indicates that at least for 2 of the represented groups, that as of September 1, that they're entitled to whatever was approved as part of the 3-year bargaining agreement with with the FA and with the Guild.
Lynn, do we have many people that are eligible to retire?
Lots.
Lots? Ah,
How do we do a forced
I
retirement?
wasn't going to go into any detail on that because, you know, some people are well beyond the retirement age, but you maybe started later and don't have as many years as, you know, as others. I plan to cover you know, a number of these items in my report because much of this has been discussed all across SUNY over the last
I'm
week.
sure. Yeah, yeah.
10 days. I don't believe there's a single contract, including the state ops, the statewide contract, that, you know, it's never been brought up. So I'm sure there's not a single contract amongst SUNY, the 100 contracts that exist in the community colleges and the few for the state ops where there's any, you know, force majeure type of clause. And if there was, I'm sure it would have come up with all the conversations we've had.
Okay. It's pretty dire, isn't it?
It can be. I mean, a 20%, you know, cut by the state is one thing. You know, obviously, just common sense, much more manageable, you know, than a 50% cut, which is almost unmanageable. You don't know what kind of an institution you'll have left, you know, at that point. Because it's not the only cut. I mean, there are other cuts. You know, we've already been cut once, as everybody knows. Only the community colleges have been cut, and K-12 actually took a cut as well.
But you know, if there's no money, what can you do? There's no money.
That's the issue. You know, and there doesn't seem to be any momentum, you know, at the federal level for discussions. You know, each day it comes up and doesn't seem to go anywhere. You know, it seems to me that, you know, once the states, you know, because I mean, you're talking fire, police, first responders, teachers, you know, all of that, and higher education, you know, once the rubber, you know, hits the road here with snowball starts rolling downhill, what kind of a message that will send to the feds, who knows, and how much can the feds spend on top of the $3 trillion they've spent already? I mean, that's another issue. But you know, that's really, I think right now, the only hope to mitigate, you know, some real disaster, you know, but that's a month away. You know, they're on pause in Washington right now. So, you know, who knows? And I know the SUNY board is meeting this afternoon, and I'm not quite sure. And that's part of the problem here. The target is constantly moving, you know, by the day. But why don't we, you know, finish these last 2 items, and then I'll get into a whole bunch of things in my report.
Kevin, I just had one last question. Maybe you're going to get into it. Have you done any plans about Carnegie? Obviously, it's not going to open. what you're gonna do with that for the
Well, it's no
fall?
different than any other lab situation as far as the classes are concerned. Whether we can open labs or not and how we can open labs and all that. And, doing demonstration classes, and all that. And when gatherings can happen, which is for everybody, it's not just for us. It's across the board for every campus and gathering venue in the United States. We'll have to see as we move into those categories. Phase one starts, doesn't impact food services, doesn't even impact classes. When phase one starts at the end of the week, assuming we continue on the downward curve. So, we've got to look at what I've sent a lot of hospitality reopening guidelines to Ray. Where in other states they've been reopening, hospitality venues is going to be the last thing here, but others have already done it. And we'll see where we are. But as far as the classes, it's no different than offering labs on campus.
Oh, okay. Do I need?
All right,
to
any other
say
discussion on
anything?
2.7? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item 2.8, I'm gonna put a caveat on this one to start. Margaret just said we're in dire situation, and I found it. Recommend approval of the bid tabulation for the campus services renovation bid. I guess what I'd like to do is make a motion or have a motion made and a second, and then have a discussion. But I would like to say that as we have a fiduciary responsibility, and I'd like Michael to speak to what this approval would mean, and should we hold on this from our fiduciary responsibility. So one, can I have a motion for the
I'll
bid
move.
tabulation? Moved by Margaret, second by Nick.
Second.
All right, discussion, Michael?
And so this is not being funded out of the operating budget. This is a SUNY approved capital project. It was approved a couple of years ago. And, it's taken the college time to kind of reorganize the student building and move the print shop and redesign. So it's just taken the college quite a bit of time to figure out all the logistics related to the RFP. This has no impact on the operating budget. It is an approved budget by SUNY. The foundation provided the match funds for this. And I would.
Are all references taken so the low bid is the low bid that we're seeing, or are we gonna walk through each item, David?
This is just the low bid for each of the four primes that we have listed here.
No, I understand that, but you have a reference like 1 through 12 has the bid amount and then it has the add. So is the add part of the final, or are we taking certain ones?
Anthony, the base bid is, and as Michael indicated, the base bid is the primary purpose of the project, and that's to create a rehearsal room for music. Right now, they're using a classroom that we put a double door in. The instruments are out in the hallway. It's just not a very practical or functional.
Right, but doesn't
situation.
the base bid change depending on what you select? Or are we just selecting the base bid?
We're only selecting the base bid at this point, and that's the creation, that's the moving of the copy center and the creation of the rehearsal room.
So if I'm looking at this correctly for everybody on the call, Streeter's the low bid at $279 for the general?
No, it's LaChase because we add in the COVID-19 contract.
That's what I'm asking you. Which ones are we adding in?
Just item 0.
Item 1.
No, item
2.
Item 0. I'm not sure what you have in front of you, Anthony.
Mine says base bid cost for labor, equipment, and materials. That's reference 1. And then reference 2 is COVID-19 requirements add to base bid of $3,900 for Daniel Lynch, $4,200 for LaChase.
Correct, right. So correct. We're adding the COVID dollar amount. Correct.
So if we add the COVID dollar amount, LaChase is at 287.
287.2. Correct.
Yeah, and then if we go to HVAC, it would be LaChase, Pekoski.
Correct.
And if we go to plumbing, it would be Pekoski.
correct,
And if we go to electrical, it would be
Nelcor.
Nelcorp.
correct.
All right, just so we're on the same page, so everybody knows what we're looking at.
That's
I have
correct,
a
The
question.
other items are not gonna be done at this time.
correct.
I have a question for Michael. The money is set aside and it's matched with the foundation, so it's not part of the operating budget. What would happen if we delayed the project due to what's going on for 6 months or for a year? Would the money still be there? I have a problem with perception of us doing this at this time.
You're muted, Michael.
Unit, Michael.
So we're getting a lot of pressure from SUNY regarding projects that, you know, they've approved a couple of years ago. They've gone out and bonded for the project. And, you know, the college isn't moving forward. So I would say that there is some risk, especially now with the state reviewing all their funding sources and all their capital projects, which they're currently doing. We submitted to them last week what the college has determined is the most critical projects that we want to move forward with. So I would say that there is some jeopardy to the extent that we requested this funding. The state's provided it. We've represented the match that we have. You know, SUNY's going to sit there and say, what are you guys doing? So I think there is some risk related to that. More importantly, the music department is represented, especially in light of COVID-19, in order for them to get some programming in place for the fall, to the extent that we have some kind of phased in opening. That'll be really critical to have that renovated area, not so much for a practice for, I'm making up the number, let's say 50 musicians, but they're going to need social distancing in that room to do other types of musical teaching that otherwise wouldn't be afforded to them in the traditional classroom. So, you know, they've expressed to us that there would be significant risk to their enrollment for the fall if they don't have this music room available to do alternative types of instruction to the traditional type that they have. So I think based on that, you know, I think the college has tried to be sensitive about only trying to initiate either from two perspectives: perception, health and safety of either our maintenance staff and or construction firms, and also just, you know, the critical nature of the work that's being done. Is it either being done from a health and safety perspective, or is it a fairly important, I wouldn't say critical, but a very important aspect to the academic side of the college. And I think with this particular project, you know, the funding is available, and, you know, the project has, for any number of factors, has been delayed. And I think it would be important to utilize the funding and get the project done.
Michael, I understand where you're coming from, but it doesn't make sense to me that the state wants to cut us at the lowest level, $3.5 million, and force us to spend $544,000 to do this at this time. I understand the bureaucracy you're going through, but it just doesn't make sense.
And if I could jump in here for a minute, for whatever reason, even during the Great Recession, when we took 20% cut to state aid over 2 years, 15 in 1 year and 5 in another, capital did not change or slow down at the time. That's the bureaucracy, the politics, or whatever. There's been no change right now. I don't disagree with you at all, Nick. It's a great question. Right now being on the REDC, there's been no change to any of those pots of funding at this point. The governor's made those a priority. What it would take to divert them to other things, I don't know. But they've not been diverted at this point, knowing that the first big day, I guess it's Thursday or Friday, we're supposed to hear about the state budget. That was kind of the second date we heard. First was the 2-week period for the legislature, and then we heard, oh no, it's going to be May 15th. 2-week period for the legislature is really over, the state legislature, to do anything, and we didn't expect that they would. The other aspect that is the state wants to get construction projects going to help reboot the economy. Now that's just grossly in the dialogue out there. That's one of the things they want to move forward to reboot the economy. So that we could get caught up in that whole sweep to begin reopening the economy. And this is a direct classroom investment. So for better or worse, all the stars are aligned, at least at today, to move this one forward because it is primarily a classroom investment. Campus services is kind of a misnomer. That happens to be where music is now located in that building, and that's what we call it because we have such weird names for our buildings. We'll see, as by Friday, if the state changes anything and decides to move some of that money around. But historically, they haven't. They've protected their capital as a way to reboost the economy coming out of whatever the recession was, among other things. And it's delayed. It's being paid for over time. They don't have to pay for it today. Another dynamic that we face both with the county and and we are recommending delaying capital projects with the county for the very reasons you state, Nick. So that's where we are today. And it's not unusual at all in how the state has operated.
Has anybody asked to have this thing delayed? The other thing that I was thinking about is the perception to the faculty. You're spending $544,000 on a music room and trying to cut the faculty. Has anybody asked to see if in fact this thing could be postponed for 6 months due to everything that's going on without hurting the project? Michael, I understand what you're saying, that the money needs to be spent, but I mean, how much does it hurt if it's done now or 6 months from now?
Well, we would have to delay being able to offer those music classes then.
I think the perception is to our advantage to get something going like the economy, which is what, the governor is trying to say. And as far as correct me if I'm wrong, but we're talking about apples and oranges as far as funding, correct? By delaying this project is not going to help us as far as our labor costs, correct? You're talking about perception. I don't get it. We're talking about moving the economy. Anthony mentioned the contractors. You're investing this money.
Yeah, Prokosky's local. That's important.
I'm sorry?
That's local. The plumber's local, right?
Yes. They're
all of
both
them are-
local, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every choice we make of this nature is going to be a Hobson's choice. There's no question about it. And some of it's going to be restricted, by the rules, that we have. Now, before we get going on this, the state could, take a left turn, on Thursday or Friday, and then we'd have to revisit this.
So
right
we
now,
don't know
there's
that
been-
funding is absolute. We're not sure that funding is absolute, right, Michael?
Yeah, I would say that at this point, nothing is absolute, but I would say that the state has represented, as Dr. Drum has indicated that, and I think you see this at a statewide level, that one of the first things that's being eased in the lockdown is construction. And so I think the state is,
Yeah. I,
strongly advocating to the extent they've already committed to the project, they've already borrowed for the project. We've represented, the college has represented that this is a critical item. The music department has very poor facilities in which to teach and instruct. And I would just say that there's been strong advocacy, maybe not by the entire faculty, but certainly within the music department faculty, strong advocacy about, improving the, the classroom spaces and the other spaces by which they're, providing instruction. So I think there is a strong advocacy group, at least on behalf of the departments that are impacted by this, that it's been a long time waiting for this project to be completed.
Can I make?
And I think if we could divert the funds, the faculty certainly wouldn't like it, but that they would support that. Right now, there's no way to divert it that would just sit there.
Can I make a recommendation?
That's just my point.
To try to alleviate everybody on the call and make everybody kind of make this a win-win. What we've done on a couple projects is we've called the contractors and have them hold their bid for 90 days. I guess my question here, the board can approve this and have them hold it for 90 days pending the outcome of the COVID or the governor or whatever you want to call it. And then therefore it's approved. And when we go into our meeting on Thursday, we could just say items 2.1 through 2.8 were approved. Nobody will look into from a sensitivity standpoint, but we're moving the project forward. And then we have the caveat there that they're holding it for 90 days. And if we find out something goes definitely awry, we don't have to move forward the project. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if we hold it for 90 days, we really have to hold it, depending on how long it would take till January. Because
right, but at least it still moves forward and you get a commitment from the contractor to hold it for 90 days. Doesn't mean you have to use the whole 90 days. You can move it forward in 2 weeks. They just have to hold their bid for 90 days.
And so Anthony, in our contracts, which are, really county contracts, we have a clause in the contract that says that the contracts are subject to appropriations. And so the college has the ability, to the extent that there aren't appropriations, to terminate the agreement.
I'm not following.
So within the contracts that we will execute with each of the primes, there is language in the contracts that indicate that the contracts are subject to appropriations, okay? And so to the extent that what you're saying, to the extent that for some reason there aren't state appropriations, there's a freeze put on, there's whatever the case may be, that we have the ability within those contracts. And first of all, it's going to take us several weeks to execute the contracts in the first place, right? But then secondarily, within the agreements, it indicates that the college has the authority and ability to terminate contracts that based on the fact that there's not an appropriation available.
I think Nick's talking about perception. I think that if we're hiring people and they're coming up and doing work and it's construction, I think that's the community even looks at it with a different eye. I think it's not bad. I think it's a good thing to look at. I think the perception is we're helping the economy to get back.
I agree. That's the point I was trying to make.
Okay, let's vote.
respectfully disagree.
Can we call the question?
Yep. Can I have where do we, all right, we'll call this to a vote. Because we already had a motion, we already had a second, we had discussion. So I call it to a vote.
I vote
Aye.
aye.
Aye, Barb,
Aye.
Nick?
Nay.
Well, I'll vote aye. So it's 3-1, it passes, and we'll move forward. Item 3.1, President's Report.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, for your time, and glad everybody is well. A quick update on our student village, being used as a quarantine facility. Our two original guests are out with no issues or concerns. We do have a third one in there who was moved from a hospital with 3 days to go in their quarantine period. So they just moved in late yesterday, same situation, but should be out on Thursday if that person continues on the path they've been on for the last week and a half. And they are scattering these folks all over town where the hospitals are now doing elective surgeries. They're just reaching a point where they want post-COVID, otherwise healthy folks out at some point, because they've got unhealthy people coming in now, both for COVID and now for elective surgeries. So same room being used, same services, no contact with our people. I'll keep you posted, on that, but so far without incident. As far as coming up on the reopening, it's a little more complex for us because we've never been closed. Unlike so many businesses out there that have really been completely shut down, we've never closed. So reopening is a bit of a misnomer for us and for any essential business that's been operating. The challenge, of course, as with others who have been completely closed, we'll be bringing people back to campus. We're in the process of putting a process in place, this week. We can take it slow because we have been open and operations, have been moving forward. And again, as I said last month, I'm really proud of our folks and how they handled the scramble in mid-March to start all the remote services and distance learning, and how well it's certainly not been ideal, or especially for our more challenged students. We're going to lose more of them than we ordinarily do across the country. I mean, across the world, it's going to be no different. But I'm really proud of our faculty and staff and how they stepped up to handle this and how they've been handling it, at a distance. Great. I don't want to call it a dry run, but a great experience that we'll be much more prepared for in the fall, assuming that we'll be in some hybrid form with some classes on campus and a lot of distance learning as well, which is how most places are planning for this at the moment, except those that really want to be as fully on campus as they can be, in the fall. We have yet to see what the education group comes down with. I've heard now 2 groups in Albany working on regulations for schools and colleges. There's been 2 announcements of groups in Albany. I don't know, exactly where that is. It's rather confusing. Right now, since the second group was just announced, I don't quite get that, and I don't have any details on it. Hopefully, I'll learn today. I'll be on a NICAP, New York Community College Association of Presidents call this afternoon. I'm on a subgroup looking at not so much reopening, but what does post-COVID, what does the post-COVID era, or it's not going to be post-COVID for a long time, but whatever we want to look at it, post the shock of COVID, I guess, going to look like for community colleges. And I can tell you that every organizational scenario anybody has ever thought about is being discussed. Everything from how the heck could we possibly continue with the structure and the funding model we have now, which was a struggle to begin with. It was broken and now it's shattered. Again, not just for us, it's for everybody. At least for community colleges, it's shattered. We'll see what happens to other sectors in the long run. But every possible organizational model that exists in the whole country that has been discussed by the subgroup, everywhere from systems that look like the state ops to everything in between. Any model you can think of exists out there somewhere, and our subgroup is discussing those. And then on Fridays, we share with all 30 community college presidents. Everybody is more or less in the same boat. Some schools are already preparing for layoffs and have laid off. We're not there. We're not there yet. We'll see. It seems inevitable, but I know the SUNY board is meeting this afternoon. SUNY's been talking a lot about why are the community colleges in line for such a regressive cut as compared to other sectors of public higher education. And really, what's at risk is the future of equity in higher education for the state of New York. And certainly, the senior institutions handle a slice of that market that comes in more socioeconomically challenged. But by far, our community colleges address that population for the state of New York at much greater magnitude than any other sector. And in the worst case scenario, equity is at risk for a generation, not just even for a decade. And SUNY's aware of that, and those have all been part of our conversations. And online is a big part of that conversation, because if you're a more challenged student to begin with, more challenged home situation, you don't have internet at home, on top of that, you're far more challenged than you were the day you stepped foot on campus. And that population will continue to struggle all the more, for the foreseeable future if something isn't done about that. The whole most of the equity equation goes out the window for the state of New York for a very long time, and that's a truly saddest part of this from a community college mission perspective, and we've spent a lot of time talking about that amongst the community college presidents. At least one campus already, the unions have agreed to forego their raises for the fall. Only one that I'm aware of, but I won't say which one, but one so far. And we will continue talking this week about our rebooting strategy. I guess not reopening. I'm not sure the best way to put that, since we have never closed. And how we will slowly begin to bring people at least back to campus offices. There won't be any classes on campus for the summer. There won't be classes on any campuses for the summer, and within SUNY anyway, and I assume CUNY. But everybody's planning to have something on campus for the fall, and we'll have a plan by the end of the week or the first part of next week. I've shared all along, and I think, I'm not sure if I shared my most recent update with you. I think I did. That we're really looking toward early June, for bringing more folks back on campus with social distancing and having proper markings and lines and all that sort of thing that you see in the supermarkets and pharmacies and wherever you might go. During, or might have gone, during this time, if you've been out for bringing people back on campus. So much of what we're doing is at a distance now. Much of that can continue for a while so that we can do this slowly. It's not like we've been closed and now we got to open to get business back up as fast as possible, but we are in that boat for fall. We do want to get business back up as close as possible for fall. Enrollment continues to run down across the state for community colleges anyway. No one has said they're even close to up. It's a question of whether some are closer to hitting their down targets than others. Some hit their demographic wall sooner than we did. Our demographic wall, actually, we don't hit the big one till next year. So next year, that's the big one for the southern tier. So that's where we are today, and you'll hear a lot more over the course of the next week or so. And again, we expect to get the news from the state on Thursday or Friday regarding how they plan to at least adjust the budget the first time. It may not be the only time. And hopefully, we'll hear some more rumblings from Washington, that's, about whether there's going to be any sort of state and local government stimulus package, at all, for the future. If there is, it's going to be a while, but I'm sure there'll be more conversation in the national press today.
Thank you, Dr. Drum. Any questions for Dr. Drum? Okay, being none, Michael, 3.2, budget and finance.
So you have the monthly budget forecast through the end of April. Based on what we know today, we're still projecting a balanced budget. Have a higher level of confidence that we think we'll have a balanced budget, notwithstanding some of the factors that I identified a couple of months ago. I think, in light of COVID-19, spending patterns are even less than what we had implemented in terms of policies and procedures. So at this point in time, we think we do have a balanced budget through the end of this fiscal year.
I've said this 100 times, great job on the budget. I'm starting to think you're a magician.
Michael, I have a question for you. Is there any talk from the state about these, if the cuts come from the state, about using up fund balance?
I don't think there's been any discussion, but clearly in our scenarios that SUNY required us to submit a couple of weeks ago, you really have three, in my view, three areas to address short-term cuts and then long-term cuts. And from my vantage point, that includes the CARES Act funding. So we have 2.4 million. We have fund balance at 5.2 million. So you add those two together, that's 7.7 million. So if the state cuts us at 50%, there's 7 million. And that's just in the current year, because what we're anticipating is if they propose a cut in the end of this week or next week, what are they going to take? They're going to take our fourth quarter payment. So our state aid payments are quarterly. So the fourth quarter is 3.5 million. So, it would be fairly easy, let me put it that way, from the state's perspective, just say, hey, we're not gonna give any of the community colleges their fourth quarter payment. That would be 3.5 million right there. So really the only way to address that, assuming today we have a balanced budget, is use the CARES funding at 2.4 million, and then perhaps have to do the rest with an appropriation of fund balance. Now you generally don't appropriate fund balance until your year end concludes, and then if your net position is negative, then it taps fund balance. But you wouldn't typically do that until October or November when we submit the annual report to SUNY. And then so those are two revenue sources, and then really the only other place, assuming we've already implemented pretty significant spending freezes in discretionary areas, is because about 85% of the budget is payroll and benefits, then you're going to have to address hiring freezes, voluntary incentive plans, and reduction in workforce. Again, every 100 FTEs, the average salary is about 50 grand, and then your benefits are another almost 50%. So you have about 75,000, give or take, for every FTE. So multiply that times 100, and that's 7.5 million. So those are really the scenarios, once you get the two discretionary areas down bare bones, then your only really other scenario is FTEs, staff FTEs.
Any other questions? Okay, Dave, 3.31 facilities update.
Yeah, I'll be quick. You have the report in front of you. We already spoke to the music department upgrade. The other major project we have that was on hold was the Decker Student Center roofing project. And J&B Installations is starting to mobilize to restart that work within the next couple of weeks. So that's a plus because that roof has needed replacement, the Baldwin Gym roof, for quite some time now. Some other notes of interest, the 3 solar-powered BC Transit bus shelters have been installed on campus. And the contractor for the county did a great job with those. They all look really, really good. The contract at the north end of our campus, the intersection with Front Street and our campus loop road, has been completed by the DOT. We're in the process of finalizing a contract to look at the Titchener Hall cooling tower, which is the original tower that was installed back when that building was built back in the 90s. So we're going to look at a couple of things, both its current location and the functionality of it, and what we can perhaps change and or improve over what we currently have. We've got a greenhouse siting study that's being progressed by Holt Architects. And it's just a siting study, I'll qualify that, and that's intended to, if and when we decide to move forward with a greenhouse project, what the best potential site for that greenhouse would be. We've got a couple of street light poles on our campus loop road that will be repaired and or replaced by Schuler Haas. That work should be starting within the next couple of weeks. And the transformer for the AT building, structurally, it's becoming in a not very good condition. Plus, the oil test that we had over the fall indicated that getting close to replacement. So that is another project that we will be looking at over the next couple of weeks. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, I want to know about the solar heating in the bus terminals there.
I think, Margaret, I think it's just for the lighting. I don't think it's for, I think it's just for the lighting for the stops, the bus stops, because obviously the bus runs up here at night to pick up kids from the night classes.
Yeah.
It's mainly for the lighting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering how you could heat it.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, 3.32 human resource report, Lynn.
Good morning. We have a standard report this month, very limited in activity, but nothing unusual.
Okay, I assume. Mike
Can I
just-
ask Lynn a question? Lynn,
Yes,
how many people are eligible for retirement? Give me your educated guess.
we're just starting to really look at that, Margaret. I really don't think I have an educated guess. We'll know better in the next couple weeks.
Because that would, won't take care of your problem, but it prevents younger people being furloughed. So I'd be curious how many are eligible. Thanks, that's all.
Okay.
One thing, the only thing I was able to quickly, determine is we have close to 100 people who are at the minimum Social Security age or older.
100 out of how many, Kevin?
Out of 400.
400 full-time.
So 25%.
25% are eligible. Oh,
Close. Are at the minimum Social Security age or older. Close. That's the minimum Social Security age, not the full or max.
right, yeah. Gotcha.
Okay, any other questions? Michael, I assume 3.3.3 budget through 3.3.5 investment are just standard?
Yes.
Okay, any other new business? Can I have a
The
motion?
latest news report is that the boys are keeping the main supermarket open.
Oh,
They are?
That's the latest news report from the outside world. Who
Yeah, I got
knows?
a couple calls on that yesterday, people that use it want to know if I knew. I just assumed that the store would stay open, that this was more in their conference facility.
Well, that's the latest report, is that the brothers are going to keep it open.
huh.
Who knows? Everything's changing by the hour of the day. That's a big part of the problem.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by
Second.
Barb, second by Nick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Have a good day,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thanks,
Thank-
Anthony.
See everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.